Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. We're gonna have a look at AMD. I think there's been a lot of negative discussions about AMD ever since the earnings last week. We can see that one of the big, let's say, semiconductor space YouTube channels also starting to look at, maybe it's time to trim their positions. This is something that I completely disagree with, and I'll explain to you with a few graphs very soon why I think we are just at the cusp of AMD increasing their profit margins, not by a little, but like insane amount, similar to what Nvidia did, let's say in 18 months or 12 months ago. We can see that also generally there's a lot of good vibes out there. If you forget the stock price, for the first time ever, AMD outsells Intel in data center space. Who could have thought about that? We can see that AMD launched the 9800X3D for the consumer kind of market on the CPU side. We know that AMD's just recently earnings that they got released last week showed that the gaming segment was taking a huge hit. It hasn't been this bad for, I don't know, like years, if I recall. Look at these numbers here. Ever since, it's never been that kind of bad, 400 or so. But I think this is also something that will recover in Q4, and as we go onward, I do believe that the gaming segment for AMD will start to gain some momentum, and by end of next year, it's gonna definitely be well over 1 billion. I do believe that when the consumers are stronger as well. But the gaming is, not gonna be the main reason why AMD stock and the earnings per share is gonna skyrocket, as I show you here. For example, you can see before I show you the graph, just look at my Excel sheet here. So you can see that my gap earnings per share is gonna go from what we are right now, 48 cents, 47 cents, thereabout, depending on if you look at the basic or diluted shares. But let's say just below 50 cents to close to $2 earnings per share on a single quarter. And this is for a stock that is currently trading at 145 US dollar. Just imagine next year from now, you'll see the Q3 and Q4 earnings very soon in 1 year from now. And you'll see, 1.9, 1.8 or 2 US dollar earnings per share. That's a yearly run rate of 8 US dollar. And the current stock price is at 145. So you have the potential, if my calculations are true, to buy this stock at the current price for just about 15 or so price to earnings ratio for next year's Q4. That's, to me, that's the best value I would have loved to have AMD at above 200 US dollar by now, but at the same time this gives you opportunity to even load up even more. Remember, you are getting a hugely nice deal, in my opinion here. So let's go quickly. We've seen the headlines that the product lineup is really strong. They're outselling Intel, as I mentioned. But let's go to the more details. Remember that Lisa Su has always said this year that they're very strong on inferencing in AI GPU space, whereas Nvidia has good hardware for inference and training. Now, in the beginning, I do believe that a lot of these companies are putting a lot of hardware for the training side, as essentially what it means is they're training their models, right? So they need to have more accurate models, and they need a lot of hardware that is very good on training part of the AI piece of cake. Whereas the inferencing is where, for example, we go onto ChatGPT and ask for whatever it could be. And actually, I can give you one example, which is why I'm even more confident on investing in chips that are, exposed to AI. So today I was at work and I needed to do a script, a programming script, and I have no clue where to start because I'm not a programmer, right? I'm let's say a mechanical engineer or so. So I have no clue what to do. I don't know what Python is, what JavaScript is, or whatever. And in 15 minutes, I managed to, with ChatGPT, write a program that worked and did everything I wanted it to do with 5 or 6 questions in 15 minutes. Like, if I didn't have that tool available to me, it would have taken me like 3 weeks, or I had to go to another colleague that is good in, programming, and they would put away, I don't know, 1 day or 2 days of their working time. The company had to pay for it, but now I just, did a simple Googling. I didn't even need to log in into anything. There's a, free, without account, ChatGPT account that you just log in and there you ask your questions. So it was quite like, refreshing kind of seeing it so closely in a work environment. And that's essentially where I understood that this AI thing might actually not be a nonsense, because I actually felt it for the first time for real. Today, I can definitely say that today was the first time that I think the AI, whatever it is that everyone is talking about these last 18 months, for me, it became real. And what better way to invest in AI than, in a stock that I know very well over the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years? And I think we are, at the cusp of huge increase. Remember, my model builds on a few facts. They have four segments if you're new to this company, right? Data center, client, gaming, which is, what I said, for example, 9800X3D for gaming CPUs, right? And then you have your embedded, which is the purchase of the best FPGA company on the planet that they bought 3 years ago, named Xilinx. Xilinx, sells a lot of stuff to special kind of things, let's say to hospitals, if you're doing a image scanning of your body or magnetic scanning on your body, or then the chips in there could be from Xilinx or AMD. If you're in automotive, these guys are huge. So it's been a lot of, let's say, lesser kind of bullish cycle over the past 18 months after when AMD kind of purchased Xilinx in 2021 and 2022. You can see the revenue at Xilinx. The first full quarter was Q2 of 2022, I believe, and they were averaging 1200, let's say 1.2 to 1.6 billion US dollar, and then it fell to the 800s or so, and we now finally got our first rebound, although a small one. We went from 861 to 927, but I do expect by end of next year to be well over 1 billion there. Gaming was like truly bad. The gaming revenue was less than half a billion, which is, I don't remember last time AMD had that kind of low gaming revenue. But that as well, I think is going to be really strong as the interest rate goes down, the consumer gets stronger. I think definitely the gaming will as well be north of a billion by the same time next year. So only based on those two segments, we could see that if everything else stays equal, AMD could have a Q3 of 2025 with more than 1 billion or 2 billion more than today's revenue. Let's say the 6.8 that we just got, right? But remember, AMD will definitely have a much better client segment, I believe, next year as well, due to their position of strength in laptop CPUs, laptop APUs, and as well laptop GPUs. So AMD is historically never been stronger in the laptop segment or mobile laptop segment. And that's why I think the client part for AMD will be huge next year, well over 2 billion. It could even, honestly, some people say that we could look at numbers close to 3 billion. I think that's possible, but I went very low. And then, of course, the data center, which you remember consists of their EPYC lineup, the CPU based, and Instinct, the GPU based, or the AI stuff that you hear every day. Now, if you look at the AI, the GPU stuff, she started the year, Lisa Su, talking about a revenue of, let's say, 2 billion or so of AI GPUs being sold in early 2024. And in Q2, I think she increased that number of 2 billion to 3.5. Then she increased it to 4 or 4.5, and then now lately in last earnings to 5 billion. Now, so if you think it next year, my opinion, I think AMD will sell well over 10 billion in AI GPUs. Why do I say that? So if you see here, my run rate for Q4 this year is 2.1 billion. If we assume a very small increase, like 250 million, or let's say just above 10%, maybe 12% increase from Q4 this year to Q1 next year, and then another, maybe 350, 250 million increase, another 10%, or let's say 8% increase in Q1 and Q2. So I think the Q1 and Q2 first half will be a little bit slower, although, substantial for AMD, going from around 2 billion to, let's say, 2.5. But I think we will see an explosion in Q3 and Q4 next year due to the fact that they finally will be strong on the also training part. Why are they going to be strong? Because this chip, MI350X. MI350X is the first AMD AI GPU that will offer a matrix FP4 kind of multiplication, whereas Nvidia did it before. I don't know which version of Nvidia AI GPU offers this already, but AMD kind of playing catch up, but they will catch up at least in terms of the operations that they will be able to do. Remember, I mentioned this before, you had FP32, and then you had like single precision or double precision, and the higher precision, like 32 bits, 16, 8, and so on. The lower you go, you lose your precision, but then you can do more kind of calculations with the same computing units available to you. So what Nvidia is kind of showing is that, maybe if you're doing inferencing or AI training models, you don't need to have extreme accuracy in your models, because these are based on language. It's not like you're calculating where uh, stars and planetary constellations are going to be in 18,000 years from now, from this point of view of the universe. So you are doing like essentially like you're logging in into some stuff, let's say ChatGPT, and asking, what did Napoleon do on whatever, like 17th of April, right? And something like that. So there you don't need a huge amount of precision, and that's what they're doing. And AMD will follow suit. And I think this is what Lisa mentioned on the earnings, that by end of next year, or at least very soon, they will have a balance between inference and training. And remember that all of the 5 billion or so of sales that they've already got in 2024 or are getting close to is essentially, I would say, probably 90% on inference. So if they increase their inference as well as, getting some substantial amount of training as well by end of next year, I think it's possible 10 billion. But what I do think is gonna happen, I think early next year she will like do the same as she did for this year. She's gonna go out and say, you know what, we had 5 billion or so in 2024. Let's go with 8, 9 billion to show a clear increase, because she doesn't know, when you go from January of 2025, maybe she doesn't know what kind of contract they are getting in October 2025. She knows they're gonna get a lot of them, but she's not 100% sure. So she's gonna probably say, 8, 9, maybe if she's very bold, which I usually don't see her doing that, maybe she could say 10 billion. If she says 10 billion, I think market will be very happy. But I believe they're gonna do more. I generally believe they're gonna do more, because let's not forget as well that, for example, Nvidia not only sells AI GPUs, they're also doing the networking of the GPUs. We have these huge, data centers, and it's not like each GPU works for themselves. They need to communicate with each other. That's when you get, the benefit all of these huge AI data centers. And what is AMD doing? Well, you see, I added another line for networking there, because they are also entering the networking space. And for Nvidia, we are talking about, 10, 15, sometimes even a little bit more of the revenue. So if they're computing AI GPUs, like, your Blackwells, your H100, H200, it's selling for 28 billion. You can see that the networking is essentially 15% or so of that. So if AMD has anywhere close to that, let's say 10%, right? You could see another 1 billion or 1.5 billion of additional revenue adding to this, 12 or so billion, 12.8 billion for already next year, because they already mentioned that in early next year, in Q1 they're gonna have as well networking solutions. So no matter how you look at it, and if we finally look at the graphs that I promised you, so let's look at this, but instead of the Excel sheets, look at the graph. So we are currently here, Q3 of 2024. We can see that the earnings per share on a GAAP basis increased from 16 cents to 47, and before that from 7 to 16. So we are already like 7 times more than in Q1 of 2024 on a GAAP basis. I think there will be a slight reduction in increase percentage. So as we can see here, from 47 to 55. But I do believe that, by end of next year, we are going to be well over, $1, $1.5. And I haven't even shown you my plans for 2026. Remember, in a couple of months, less than 2 months, we are in 2025. And in 2025, I'm going to talk about 2026, because I'm investing for the long term. As I mentioned to you, the AI frenzy is actually, in my opinion, no longer, just a hype thingy. Sure, there's some stuff that is hyping, but I think we are starting to see actually real value out there with these AI models and chatbots. So I don't think it's too late actually. And all of these combined together, I think, honestly, I know I've said this a long time, and some of you might think, okay, but maybe I should have bought Nvidia or whatever else. Yes, you should have maybe, and but as well, AMD has been, giving you an opportunity for something that is most likely going to be really well into next year. Honestly, if they get $1.5 earnings per share next year in Q3, I don't see these stocks below 250 US dollar. This is my opinion. So I think it's if you go back to, for example, cheap stock investor, I think they are potentially they are thinking of selling the stock at the worst time ever. They are, we are so close to the company turning hugely profitable. Remember that I've been talking over the past, 2 or 3 years that um, the stock AMD had huge issues with the gap and non-gap difference in earnings per share. Remember that I mentioned that AMD has a huge difference between GAAP and non-GAAP earnings per share. And here you can see that for example, in Q3 of 2023, they had a GAAP operating income of 224 million, a non-GAAP operating income of 1.3 billion almost. So like 5 or 6 times difference in, earnings per share if you look at it on GAAP or non-GAAP basis. And this has to do a lot with a little bit with stock-based compensation because it's roughly around 350 to 400 million. And the quarters that they didn't earn a whole lot of money, the stock-based compensation would be a huge part of the operating income. But as the income and gross profit increases substantially, the stock-based compensation will be, such a small part of that as we are seeing already. Remember, we are now in Q3 now, and you can see that the GAAP operating income was 724 million, of which, and then we had the stock-based compensation, then we had amortization, most likely a lot of it due to Xilinx, a little bit due to Silo AI and Pensando that they purchased as well in the last 2 or 3 years. But even there, you can see that not only does the amortization cost kind of goes down by not a huge, but 10 million or so every quarter, but also again the GAAP operating income is so much larger with every single quarter that goes on. So by the time you reach, late next year, you can see that the difference between GAAP operating income is, for example, in Q3 next year, 3 billion, whereas the non-GAAP is 4 billion. Still, 1 billion difference, but look at it's let's say 30% difference, whereas here it was like 500-600% difference. And I think that is what people are missing. If you waited so long, I think it might be worth to wait at least until summer of 2025. But that's gonna do it for today. It was a huge long video, but I believe it's very important to explain all of these nuances. And thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. I would love to see one of these AMD videos get a little bit of success so more people can actually see the potential. I think there's huge opportunity here for AMD. And yes, so again, thank you and see you in the next one.